Hello, hello, hello. We are live and we are live in conversation about self projected authority in human design. Welcome to the Energy Ergonomics channel. We talk about all things energy, particularly how we learn to cultivate our own energetic practices, our own self knowledge practices, and then use that to collaborate better with others to create inclusive and compassionate environments and to get in alignment with the universe and with our amazing internal knowings, internal guidance, and all the beautiful things that we're here to manifest. Now, today, what we're talking about is authority in human design, specifically the self projected authority. This is one of several conversations. We are covering every single authority. And the we is me and Jaclyn Michelle from Interior Creature. Jaclyn Michelle is amazing. Her website is such a huge resource for you. So it's filled with blogs. It has courses. It has a community that you can join, Catalyst, and another one for the deep, deep people who are ready to change their lives, like right now, called Karmic Studies. And she is my human design bestie. And so we're coming up today in collaboration to bring multiple perspectives, multiple viewpoints. Jaclyn will be talking about the authority in detail, and then I'm going to go into different ways you can activate your self-projected authority. We'll also be sending out various goodies. Mine is a deeper dive guide where you'll get every single activity written down. And so make sure if you're watching this, especially if you're watching this retroactively, that you do register at woofulness.com/authority, because that will give you, and it should be in the comment box, that will give you access to the guide, even if it's after the fact. And then we do have some viewers, so definitely post, tell us where you're from. If you have self-projected authority, let us know. There are going to be 2 opportunities for Q&A today. And so definitely we would love to hear the questions that you have for us. I'm going to bring up Jaclyn so I can make her blush while I tell her. Well, I tell you more about how this amazing woman has changed my life and put me here on this path today. So Jaclyn ignited my fire for human design. And I'm laughing because she was my catalyst. She gave me the spark that turned into a fire. This will make sense when you hear more about her offers. But real, it sounds like a joke, but I'm really not kidding. But my work in business coaching led me to Jaclyn so that I could get a better understanding of the people that I was helping and create better and more sustainable programs for them. And as I went on my own personal journey of following my authority for the last 12 months, and in doing that, every part of my life has been touched at this point, right? And I have changed, and it's beautiful because I've come home to myself, and I feel like all the parts of myself that I maybe vacillated in between before, they're all together. We're all here. And now I can give all of myself and receive all of the glory that is coming my way. And it's just fantastic. And so Jaclyn is someone to talk to if you are ready to make those changes. I'm someone to talk to if you're ready to make those changes in your life. And today we are going to talk about the number one thing that we get to learn in human design. The system is deep, but this piece of it unlocks everything else. Is that fair, Jaclyn?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
I made Jaclyn come do the head nod for us. I keep doing this to her, but I love it.
I'm good at it. I can do, It's the podcaster equivalent of like the,
You're really good at that.
that.
So it is now time for Jaclyn to take over. We'll get your screen up, Jaclyn.
Yep.
I will come back a little later.
Absolutely. So as I'm getting everything kind of set up, I want to take just a moment or two to introduce myself to folks who I haven't met yet before I walk you through what self-projected authority is. So as I was blushing when Mélissa was talking about me, I'm not great at taking a compliment. I'm working on that. But my name is Jaclyn Michelle. and I am the voice behind interiorcreature.com. So I've told the story a couple times now, and I'll tell it again for folks that are just tuning in. I found myself a few years ago in a position where my job had basically eaten my life. And I could not remember who I was outside of what I did for other people. And I don't know if you can relate to that, if you've had a similar experience with a relationship or like a something just kind of was basically enveloped your entire being. Like I was basically outsourcing so much of my agency and my decisions to other people for years. I become habituated to it without even realizing it. Right. I've always been a bit wooful, to use Melissa's term. I've always been into the metaphysical, the esoteric, the occult. And when I was a kid, I used to sneak out books from the library on like astrology and astral projection and like aliens and like hide them under my like Sweet Valley High books to like appear normal. But I've always been interested in this kind of field. And when I basically hit that wall in my corporate life where I was like, this doesn't feel like me, but I don't know what feels like me. I need a tool. I kind of dug back in my toolkit and found human design. So when I was studying it at the time, there just wasn't a lot of information online. And the stuff that was there felt very just kind of like the language wasn't accessible. It was a lot of lingo, a lot of jargon. And I wanted to build something that felt practical, actionable, accessible, and kind of share my journey, A, learning the system, but B, try to make it as just like, I didn't want the information to feel gate kept, if that makes sense, because it very much did at the time. Now things have changed, but interiorcreature.com was basically established to teach people how to hack their own human design chart. And now 20 to 30,000 folks come into my digital home every month to decode their design for free. And around that time, I started doing readings. So I've expanded my offering since then, but I love introducing people to their design for the first time. I also offer readings at multiple entry points because I know once you hear about human design, you find that one thing that's mirrored back that feels like you. A lot of us go down the rabbit hole. And so I wanted to make sure there was a pathway for folks who A, were just learning about the system, but also B, if they had done a little bit of research on your own, I can also support you with like pulling the pieces together, filling in the gaps, making it a little bit more practical, actionable, accessible. So if you head to my website and see the tab that says, or the little link that says book a reading, you can see all the different entry points there. I also have a master's in science of teaching. I spent 15 years in education teaching kids and then teaching teachers. And I found that you couldn't take the curriculum developer out of me. So I also teach classes introducing people to the human design system. And I have two communities, which we'll talk about one of them later. But one of the communities that I've built is karmic studies. And karmic studies is really my passion because it's about deep, deep shadow work and deep deconditioning work. So it's taking all of those parts and pieces of your chart beyond just authority and saying, what happens if I really pull this thing into the light of day, examine it, get really like intentional about how that energy is, how I'm using that energy as I walk through the world, what's working, what's not, what's serving me, what isn't, and how do I kind of get back in alignment with the version of myself that feels the most supportive, right? And so for my human design nerds that are joining, if you want to know my design, I'm a generator with sacral authority. I have a overwhelmingly open chart. I always joke that I'm the projector's generator because I only have 3 centers closed and a lot of the ones that are like very deep kind of empathy are open. And I'm also a 1-3 right angle cross of the Garden of Eden. So if you know what that means, that's great. Last thing before we dig in, one of my puppies was visiting me earlier. So the natives are getting my babies are getting a little restless here. That's a horrible phrase that I just used. Apologies for that. Sometimes these things like slip into your jargon and you're like, ooh, that's awful and problematic. And I don't know why I just said that. Anyway, my puppies are getting a little restless. These are my dogs. I'm really passionate about animal rescue. And so I have 3 little rescue puppies that are, just, they might be a little chatty. They might be a little active. They're waking up from their nap. So apologies if you hear any like barking in the distance. Let's talk about those self-projected authority, what it is, what it means, what it feels like. So one of the premises of human design we want to kind of start with is this idea of getting out of our brains and getting into our bodies, right? So one of the things that everyone in human design, besides just mental projectors, which are just like a very small kind of part of the population, folks are meant to make decisions from kind of an intuitive place. We're supposed to have a part of our body that speaks to us in like the clearest, loudest, truest sense and honors and tells us kind of where where we need to step into something that feels really in alignment, where we need to walk away from something. The problem is a lot of us get intense conditioning away from listening to that, where we have this conditioning that tells us we're supposed to be logical, pragmatic, etc. For example, like I was raised by an accountant and a professor, and in my house growing up, it was very much this vibe of like, you need to be really just logical, pragmatic, do a pros and cons list, etc., to make a decision. We never had a conversation about like, what does your intuition feel like? How's your tummy feeling? Are you excited? Like that was never a conversation. So for folks who have self-projected authority, like framing everything in the kind of, I guess, the context of your integrity, it might be something that's kind of new, that's novel, that you haven't tried before. So we want to try to like really get in touch with what is our body telling us is authentic, is, consistent. And so self-projected authority, which we're going to talk about in a second, is the realm of projectors only. They're the only type in human design that can have this as their authority. So for my projector friends, hello. And we want to use our self-projected authority in conjunction with the strategy of waiting for recognition and an invitation. So if you joined us for the Heart Manifested, Heart Projected, we talked a little bit during that discussion about how manifestors are the guide, or are the not the guides, they're the initiators. And my open throat is really on one today, so I am just saying things that are, apologies, I'm a little messy. Manifestors are here to be basically instigators, initiators. They get excited about something and or have their whatever their yes is, and they have to walk toward it. And then through the walking toward it, they figure out what's for them and what's not. Projectors are here to be the guides, right? Projectors can typically either see other people better than they can see themselves, or they can see a process, a topic, an area of study better than other people can see it. And sometimes actually like a hybrid of both. So as projectors are trying to find those communities, those opportunities where they feel seen, heard, valued, included, recognized, and then their involvement is actively sought, you want to be honing in and tuning in to your self-projected authority to basically keep you out of the situations that you're like, ooh, no, this does not feel like me, and in the situations that do, right? So that weight in your strategy has nothing to do with like a holding pattern you're supposed to keep until like the perfect thing comes your way. It's not passive. It's not meant to strip you of agency. It's basically keeping you like in your own body and honoring your sense of self, your sense of integrity, your sense of like what feels like me prior to committing yourself to anything, right? So the self center, for folks who have self-projected authority, that is the most powerful center of all of the centers you have that are closed. So folks who have self-projected authority, the heart, the spleen, the solar plexus, the sacral, the root are open. Sometimes the head and the mind might be closed, but the self still is the most powerful one, right? And it's connected up to the throat center. So some projectors with self-projected authority, it'll literally just be self and throat are activated. Sometimes you'll see self, throat, mind defined. Sometimes you'll see all four connected or not, or split. But basically, there's like a hierarchy in the power structure of centers of like how loud they speak to us, how powerful that message is. And the self center has the most powerful message of the ones that are left defined for these folks, right? So your body is basically taking every opportunity, every community, every, situation, every environment, and going, does this feel like me? Is it within my ethical, moral, like compass? Is it something that like I want to step into, I'd be proud to be associated with? Or is it something that just does not feel like me, right? That sense of contraction, that sense of expansion. So some people with self-projected authority, or even if you just have your self-center closed in your chart, you might notice that when things feel like you, it tends to be a feeling of expansion literally in the chest, a feeling of like, I'm opening up. I'm, this feels like me. I think about my little first graders back when I was a teacher who'd like get an A on their spelling test to get 100%, and then run up to mom in the schoolyard and be like, look, I got an A. And they're like beaming and their chest is open and they're smiling. Like it's that sense of like, I want to be associated with this. This thing is me. It represents me. It's something I did. I'm proud, right? Folks who have this center closed also might notice a contraction in the chest. And that's literally like, I don't want to be associated with that thing, right? it doesn't feel like me. I want to like put literally physical distance. So you might notice it as just like an expansion or a contraction. I've also noticed things like maybe you're stepping forward, stepping away, very similar to where the way the heart kind of talks to us with that proximity and distance. You might even notice if something's really a self-centered no, that you physically step away from it. It's your body basically trying to subconsciously vet whether something feels like you want to put your name on it, you feel like you can identify with it. It's something that like walking toward feels very aligned. As Mélissa might say, like, is it on brand for, your, does it feel like something you'd put your, you're proud to have your stamp on to be associated with? So for the projectors who have self-projected authority, you might see it actually listed as a whole bunch of different things: self-authority, identity authority, G center authority. Like those all might be the different names that, come up here. Just because every software kind of sometimes uses different terminology. Some people are really married to calling the self-center the G. So it is like, it's just tomato, like they're the same, different names for the same things. And we can use it for both small and large decisions, right? So projectors are the only ones who can have self-projected authority. And one of the things I've heard from my clients over the years is, and this is again why deconditioning and shadow work is such a powerful, big part of my own practice, is you want to think about, have you been allowed to show up as your full self? Have you been allowed to claim your identities, or have identities been assigned to you from other people? And what is your relationship with your sense of just like what I claim and how I define myself? And so deconditioning can be massive, because especially when it comes to race, gender, ability, gender presentation, gender identification, sexuality, all of those things, there are labels we're assigned with from other people that we can't control, but then there's also identities that we claim, right? And so with self-projected authority, getting into your own kind of shadow work around, how do I see myself and what are my core values and how do I want to be seen by others and experienced by others, can also be kind of like the mana, the energy that you feed your self-center, so it starts speaking to you a little bit more loudly, right? So anyway, projectors only can have this center closed. And I think as the guides, it even becomes more powerful, because you deserve as a projector to be in the communities where your guidance is going to be the most impactful, right? And to do that really well, you have to know yourself. You have to know, like, these are the folks I'm going to really jive with, and these are the folks I can support. We all have aligned morals, ethics, values. It's on brand, if you will. And then maybe there are other folks that it's not a knock on you or a knock on them. It just isn't a good energetic fit. So that's the other thing too. A lot of my clients will mention sometimes that they feel like they're being judgmental when they honor their self-center. And it's kind of like building that confidence in yourself to kind of know that just because something doesn't feel like aligned, it doesn't mean it's a judgment on that thing. Like I always use the example of shopping. Like if you go out shopping with a friend and they grab a blouse from the rack and they're like, oh my goodness, this looks so good on you. And you look at that blouse and you're like, no, it wouldn't. What are you talking about? Like, it doesn't mean that you think that blouse should never have been manufactured, or that we need to like, put the designer of that blouse in jail. It just means that that doesn't feel like you. Right. And so as you're walking through the world, that's literally what your self is doing. It's trying to magnetize things towards you that are aligned with your ethics, your morals, your values, your sense of self. So again, if you're feeling like you're not always feeling that sense of like identification or contraction, digging into that work of like identity and how you define yourself versus how other people have defined you, like, can be a really amazing portal to kind of activate that, right? So again, as that projector, you've got this kind of two-pronged, strategy, right? You're supposed to wait for recognition and an invitation. And the way I actually understand that is, as a guide, you deserve to be seen, heard, valued, and included. So it's not that you're in this like holding pattern waiting for the perfect thing to come to you. It's more of, as you're walking through the world and opportunities are coming your way, you're seeing job postings, you're seeing groups of people, and maybe your involvement is being sought, or you want your involvement to be sought somewhere. It's about really taking that moment and checking in with yourself and going, do I feel seen, heard, valued, included? Is that the energy that I'm experiencing from other folks? But also, do I want to see these people? Like, is this something I want to be associated with? Like, do I feel like, I want to give my value to this group? Is it a mutual two-way sense of alignment, right? And then when the recognition is there, again, you're always continuously checking in with yourself. You're feeding your body as much information as possible. If you're not getting a clear read from your self center, asking questions can be really helpful, because the more data your body has, the easier it is for you to say, I feel aligned or I don't. Like, I identify or I don't. And so, getting as much information possible. And then when the invitation comes, it should be much clearer in your body as to whether you're like, yes, I want to move forward. I feel connected. I feel aligned. This feels like, yeah, I identify, or no, I don't. So that's just kind of the way that self-projected authority speaks. And again, it might actually be easier for you to bring words to it because that throat and that self are connected. So one of the exercises that I gave one of my clients a few years ago, she was job hunting, and she was actually stepping into a different kind of branch of her field. And she wasn't really sure what she wanted that to look like. And I was like, go stand in the mirror and practice introducing yourself as that title from that company, from all these job offers you've gotten or all these interviews that you had. And like, if you can't get the words out of your mouth, or if as you're speaking them, they feel icky, it doesn't feel like you, that might be your body's way of saying it's not that. Maybe it's the company, maybe it's the title, maybe it's like the people, sometimes you can actually feel it as you're speaking it. So journaling can be a really helpful practice, as can kind of like using others as a sounding board. But again, it's not about what makes the most sense. Like someone who has sounding board authority, for example, it's literally like, as I'm speaking this out loud, am I feeling a sense of clear identification, or am I feeling this kind of like, ooh, I don't want to be associated with that. Ooh, I want to like step away from that thing. So I am going to, hopefully, I think my my control of my language has come back a little bit. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to come back up for questions.
So we are here. This is the time to post questions. If you have any, please drop a comment. We are here. And in the meantime, we will take some time. I'm actually going to talk about some of the things that are coming up for me over the next month or two, depending on what my sacral says, because I always follow my authority. I will be relaunching my community. And so we're bringing back Club Workflow. Club Workflow is our community where we get tapped in, not just with our inner authority, our guidance, but we also look at how we're impacted by the cosmos. So level one is our self-knowledge work, right? Getting to be a fully connected core, mind, body, spirit. We are all aligned. That is a mix of shadow work and abundance work, oftentimes using my HEAL framework. And I have a new RISE framework that's coming out. And so we'll be using those week to week, month to month. And the beautiful thing is we're going to use the transit. So you'll get a preview of what's coming. In everything that I'm doing, I'm adding a section that's not only for energy ergonomics. So how does this work at work? And how does this make work more efficient for us, feel good for us? But I'll also be adding an inclusivity piece. So if we're going through a gate or a channel that you do not have, then you can think about it from the perspective of another person, gain compassion, learn collaboration. My whole deal is we are going to shine in partnerships. We're going to come home to ourselves, and we're going to build our wonderlands. And the third part of that is getting really aligned with the cosmos, because when you know human design, when you are tapped in, all of this flows beautifully, hence Club Workflow. And so that is Club Workflow. It is coming soon. We also have a little time for Jaclyn to talk about Catalyst, which is her membership. So I'm going to pop her up. And then for those of you who are here, stick around, because I'm going to be giving some very specific action-oriented things you can do to get into your self-projected authority.
Hey, okay. So please pop your questions in the comment section. We're excited to answer them. Any questions you have about self-projected, feeling it, etc. So Catalyst is my new community that I'm really excited to launch. Our first event for Catalyst Spark is actually this weekend. So Catalyst is a community for folks who are just kind of beginning their spiritual journey, or folks that have been on it for a while and just are looking for that community of people to nerd out with. Back when I was younger, I think I was sharing of like how I was hiding my library books, et cetera. I legit I felt really alone at that point in time. Like I felt like there wasn't I didn't have people to talk about it with, right? So with Catalyst Spark, for example, like that's one of the wings of Catalyst. Catalyst Spark is for folks who are just beginning their journey. They're looking into different modalities. They're trying to figure out what ones feel aligned, what don't, but they just want to have like a group of people they can like nerd out about this stuff with. That's what Catalyst Spark is for. And our first event is this weekend, and we're going to be digging into the very basics of human design, and like learning about all of those different aspects of our energy, right? In Catalyst Fire, sorry. Catalyst Fire is for folks who've been on this path a little bit longer and are looking for people to just nerd out with in a very different way, right? Like maybe want to have those higher level, deeper conversations, but they don't feel like they have a community to do that, right? So what we're doing in Catalyst Fire, for example, in a few weeks, our first event is all about using your chart to do shadow work, right? To kind of forgive those parts of yourself that are a little bit messy, where you've got to, it's how do we go in and kind of identify where we need more deconditioning, where we need more realignment work, and how to kind of love those parts of ourselves that have kind of those rougher edges. So we're going to be doing that this weekend, or not this weekend, in a couple weeks coming up. Yeah, so they're just two different communities, and we have also a book club in common. So yeah, I'm excited. If that's something that speaks to you, definitely head to interiorcreature.com, click where it says Catalyst, and you can find more about the two different communities.
I love it. I love it. And you will see me there in Catalyst as well. So what we're going to be doing next is we're going to go through some of the things that you're going to find in your guide if you are registered for this event. So if you're like, I just found this on YouTube, one, lucky you. And number two, we still got you covered. So head over to woofulness.com, WOO like woo, and then fullness, FULNESS.com/authority. You can register retroactively and just let us know your authority type. You can register for all of them. And then you are going to get a beautiful guide that looks something like this. I'm going to pop in our splenic one. Boop, 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 boop. That will have the replay. It'll give you kind of different pieces of it, and it will basically give you everything you need to feel, heal, and flow with your authority. So feel, heal, and flow. There'll also be some tips for business because I love to take this and translate this into work, because work is where most of us spend most of our time. And so right now, we're going to talk about the guidance specifically for self-projected authority. This one was a fun one for me because I have done so much work on identity throughout the years, because because my identity seems to keep changing, because my incarnation cross is that of a sleeping phoenix, and so I am reborn over and over and over again, and yet I am the same, but I was doing it, I think, in a way that wasn't really aligned, and so that is the work I discovered through the work on my identity center. I am defined there. And I was working with multi-passionate entrepreneurs. And so there's a lot of questions. And so I brought in a new framework for y'all, specifically for self-projected authority in human design, but I have different exercises that I've used for clients throughout the years. I love that you brought up mirror work, because that was one of mine, Jaclyn. So I was like, we are always locked in. And so with that, I want to introduce myself. My name is Mélissa Peng. I like to say I'm an enlightenment catalyst. It's fun saying it out loud. And so I'm someone that if you spend a decent amount of time with me at some point in time, I will tell you something. And I'm laughing because Jaclyn is nodding in the green room. I will bring up something that will catalyze change and awakening in you. And if you spend a lot of time with me, that will be a lot of change and awakening over a brief period of time, which can sometimes feel like a lot, but is amazing for the people who are ready to step into their full selves, to come home to their selves. My mission is to help you come home to yourself and to get all the pieces of you into one. And that's actually why I love this authority. For me, once I decided to really follow my authority, I was taken on this amazing journey where I got to collect all the pieces of me. One of the pieces that I collected was my history, my legacy. And I am a proud great granddaughter of a beautiful Jamaican medicine woman named Caroline. And so that was a learning that came about in the most woo-woo of ways. And since then, I've also learned I'm a crystal intuitive. I've also jumped into Qigong, yoga, breath work, yoga I've been doing for 13 days, meditation, dance. Jaclyn likes to say I'm a natural witch because I've realized I do things like create altars, just all on my own. And this journey of learning, right? So many different healing modalities has really brought me back to the same thing time and again, which is that we heal ourselves. But the healing that we do for ourselves starts with this self-knowledge, starts with digging into ourselves, then starts with us extending that into community. Because hurts made in community, they heal a lot better in community as well. And so for me, this has been quite literally an enlightening experience of going through the journey of learning human design and really staying anchored in my body in a big way. For self-projected authority, we just came from the last section. For self-projected authority, we are going to have fun. So as we get into the feel, right? So much of this is actually being in your body, right? So presence is always going to come up, especially for the authority types that are more easily influenced by outside energy, right? So presence, super important. And so meditation, yoga, qigong, dance. I love dance because it's also a form of creative expression. Breath work. These are amazing tools that we can incorporate into our lives that can be really helpful for getting more connected with that inner knowing, with that inner voice. I have a framework for you. So for self-projected authority, the framework is self. I'm trying to keep them easy to remember. And again, if you've registered for this, you'll get all of this beautifully written down. You'll probably get some little videos from me too, walking through it in detail like I am now. And self-projected authority. So the S is for sensation. So we talked about, so there is sometimes this sensation, they talked about it being in the sternum, right? And so the sensation, so feeling into yourself and making sure you're saying, okay, I'm feeling this in my body is the first piece. Like, is this in my body? Number 2 is the E, right? The external, right? This is the external check, the communication. We still have to go back to our strategy too, right? Is this aligned with my strategy? Does this work externally? If there are people that this is going to impact that I need to communicate with, let me do that communication, not because I need them to say yes, because I'm going to do what my authority says, but because it might impact somebody's life. And that's important that I need to check in on that. The L is let go of anything that's not yours. That's that reminder, right? Like let go of anything that is not yours and then follow through on the things that have meaning to your life. Your is like in caps. So that is the SELF of self that we're going to use to make sure that we are staying in alignment with the authority. Now, beyond that, we've got some really fun ways to feel into this authority type. And my big one is like, listen to what you say. Now, what's really beautiful is that this is a voice that speaks to you and it really speaks well in reaction to an invitation, right? And so Jaclyn started talking about the expansion, like how we can actually have body language. In this one, like I always say, record yourself, but it's even better if you can record yourself and have someone else prompt you and see what that looks like. It's a beautiful thing. I think it's such an interesting thing. It's something I do with my clients. I've done it with you, Jaclyn. I was thinking of us, like we've had sessions where we talk, and it's this one is helpful for any authority in reality, but for self-projected, it's really important to listen to what you say. Listen to what you say can go on a deeper level. I will also literally, and this is just an identity center thing for me on whole, like a defined identity center. I literally will read back. I had so much conditioning around my identity in so many different ways, like being a Black woman in America, being a Black woman in corporate, being in corporate, being a woman, being a married woman. There's so much conditioning around identity. And so I've worked very hard to decondition. And then I have an identity that's still evolving and just getting more and more beautiful. I'm picking up pieces as we go sometimes. And with my incarnation cross, especially if you have one that has you shape-shifting sometimes, right? I love the practice of reading over the things you write, re-listening to the messages that go out, listening back to yourself. Because that is, again, you can start hearing that, and when you hear it, you can feel in your body, like ooh, that wasn't something that's in alignment with me, or ooh, that is, ooh, I liked how I said that. And so you can start picking up language from yourself. Along these lines, find a safe space for your voice, and especially if you can find a place that prompts you to ask, to answer questions, and answer questions about you. I was blessed earlier this year to work in a group that was a bit of a woo-woo spiritual group, and I got to really express myself in different ways. So I got to practice the parts of me that I didn't get to express normally in my normal environment. And so sometimes we have to pay into these spaces, which is what I did. Sometimes we are fortunate and can find them. And so find a place that's going to prompt you and ask you questions. So much of this authority is about trust, right? And learning to trust yourself in the moment, learning to trust what's coming out of your mouth, and not overanalyze it. And so again, finding that space. If you're a little bit more adventurous, I was like, get on some improv, start practicing these things, right? And see what comes out. See what comes out. This is a trust exercise. The other word I have for you is unique, right? Unique. What is my brand? This is a big question to have. So what is my brand? I had this very long conversation with a friend once, and it's a little ridiculous from my perspective, because it's not something I would usually spend time on. It was about clothes, because she's like, your clothes are not on brand. And I'm like, but I have so many different brands, because literally at that time I had 5 brands. And she's like, they're not like, but what is your brand? And we had this very long conversation where over time, I was able to hear myself and get to the place where my brand wasn't a brand that was defined, but there were some elements. And so sometimes it's about not knowing the whole thing, but knowing some of the elements so that you can be like, okay, I know what I'm not, and I know what pieces are. And so again, having that moment to voice what you believe your brand is, and to just start talking to somebody. The reason I mentioned the long conversation is because we talked forever, and it was like in a circle. Like there were so many moments where it wasn't comfortable and I wasn't polished and it was just coming out. And then there were these massive moments of clarity. And then I felt the body, and then it was like, okay, we're here. And so this is kind of what is this idea of thinking through your brand, thinking through what's unique about you, thinking through what is classic you, right? Try on different identities, or try on your identity. So this is the mirror example that Jaclyn said, right? We don't have another person, but maybe we can get a mirror. If you're here, you're on a computer. So like you can even turn on your Zoom and record yourself, but try on different identities. That could be literally like, I'm going to get into the identity. I had this party for my clients for Christmas, and everybody had to show up as their highest self, like their best, like their whatever they were working towards, that's who they had to show up as, and talk as that person and act as that person. And so again, get yourself in a mirror, talk to yourself. I have one down there, back there, and have that conversation and see how that feels. So try it on. Okay. The other fun thing is, if you want to use your creative juices, and it's also another form of self-expression, which is a big part of this, if it feels good to you, is play with a mood board. Play with a mood board. What is my mood board? Again, it's sometimes for me, it's just about practicing owning that, because so much of this is being able to trust the identity, right? Like trust what actually comes out, and trust that it's coming from the right source. Shadow work is your friend. With this one, shadow work is your friend. I try to come up with different fun exercises, but I guess if I had to pick one, shadow work is your friend. And so in the heal section, we do shadow work and abundance work. For me, like, this is digging into the labels, right? For me, as a Black woman in America, what labels am I worried about embodying? Like, that's a big question for me. So there's so many questions, but that one gave me massive breakthroughs. What labels am I actually worried about embodying? Where have I been only pieces of myself? Where do I code switch? Like, what parts of me are scattered, right? These have been massive questions. Can I be me? Where has it not been safe? Where has it been shown to me that it's not safe to be me? Where have I been hurt when I've tried to be my full self-expression? Right? What parts of me do I keep private? I like to do an identity inventory. Who am I? Who am I at home? Who am I at work? Who am I with my friends? I like to go through that. And then I like to dig into the friends, because friends, they can be amazing and they can keep you stuck in your shadow self. So I like to dig into that. And what is that relationship like? And do I have pressure there? And then we're going to get into flow, right? So flow, how do we flow with this? Now that we've done all this deep work and we've cried and we've felt empowered by finding this and feeling this, right? Presence comes back, right? How are we continuing a presence practice, a woofulness practice, right? A woo-woo plus mindfulness practice that gets us to where we want to go. Self-expression is a big piece of this. So I added in a note about self-expression, dance, art, creativity. Like, this is about what makes you happy, right? What makes you happy? What allows you to be you? And so if there's one of those things that allows you to be you and that allows you to practice expression, that's beautiful. With this authority, your truth is really what nets out to be your success. Like, when we are anchored in our truth, that gives us the guidance, and that is what magnetizes people to us, and that is what is successful. It's technically true for everyone, but it is so true. Like, this is it for y'all. And so it's funny, I was pointing to my mirror earlier. The pages that's on there are daily affirmations, and they are truths about me. The truth is, the truth is, the truth is. And so once I did the work on shadows, one of the things I dug into was like, okay, I clearly have some, even though I may figure out and know these things, I have some limits to my trust. And I can learn to trust more when I remind myself of my truths. And so I have all these truths written down. I showed them to you. And I literally will say them out loud on a daily basis, because so much of this authority is, again, not allowing others' energies, other people's excitement, wanting to care for other people and help other people override your authority. And then finally, I have some add-ons for the energy ergonomics, the business side of this. And so coming back to the brand, right? Making sure that it's not just about like your brand, but when you're going into business, do I align with their brand? That's a big one. Does this align to me? Is this in alignment? And knowing that before getting into different discussions in advance can be helpful. Negotiations. This is a moment to practice the negotiation and just, again, this comes back to like the recording and do that, like get it out there, listen to yourself, have someone come in and prompt you, see what comes out of your mouth, because that might give you a better guidance of like, oh shit, I guess I feel this way. I guess I want this. Like, and then I guess this is what would make me happy. And then one of the things I love to do is start collecting the data. So as you learn more and more about what makes you happy, what allows you to self-express, what feels good to you, start collecting this. Now, everything changes, but there are a lot of things that do remain consistent. And so you can get more and more clarity on what is an ideal environment for you and what is your setup. And so from a business perspective, having that knowledge in advance, doing that work on your own can set you up for success, so that when you're in environments where you are being filled with and impacted by the energies of others, you can still hold true to you, and you can hear that voice and be like, or let it come out and be confident in it, because you're like, oh yeah, that validates. Not like, oh shit, that's the first time I heard that, and then panic, and then mind erases it, right? So those are the core ones for this. Yeah, those are the core ones for this, and everything again is going to be in your email. Feel free. This is another question moment to let me know if you have any questions. Any questions, any thoughts, Jaclyn?
I loved all of that. I think it's what's so hard is, and I love that you brought up the identity aspect of it too. Like, and this is something that one of my recent blog posts kind of went into. Like, there's identities that are assigned to us, and then there's identities we claim as our own. And really untangling that, like, it's not a one and done. It's not something you sit down and you go, oh, good, I got it all sussed out. Like, it takes such time to figure that out. And I think the deeper you're able to do that with yourself, because the message from the self gets clearer. So I love that you brought all that up.
For me, so much of the work on this one is that deep work, because it's really trusting, right?
Yeah.
And where does trust come from? It comes from like it feeling good, but it's really hard for things to feel good in your body when you've conditioned your body completely differently.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to work through deconditioning it so that you can really embody this authority, and without all the resistance from your body.
And it's interesting to think about this in conjunction with social media. And like, we're inundated with images of what we're supposed to look like or how we're supposed to present. And so much of what's online is so highly curated that like we forget sometimes that it's not real. That I was actually thinking about that this morning. One of my neighbors has this like little bin of flowers out on their balcony, and they always look like they're in bloom. They're just beautiful. And it's weird because I'm in Arizona, but it's gotten cold here. And I remember I always see them from across the parking lot. So I remember the other day going like, oh my God, they're so fake. They're plastic. And I was like, literally like, I need to track this neighbor down. I need to find out what soil they're using. I got to get their secrets. I realized, and literally in the moment I went like, that's just like Instagram. Like, she's showing me, or they're showing me these perfect flowers, but they're not real. And like, our poor hummingbirds are probably like on their way and realizing this isn't going to help me. But so much of what's out there, I think, does like tell us who we are isn't enough. And so this closed self center rather, and the open, I think, struggle with these ideas of enoughness. And is it enough to just be exactly who I am, or does who I am need to change? And like, it doesn't need to change. Like, you come home to yourself, figure out what feels like you, and like, just remember that a lot of what we're presented with isn't real.
Yeah, and I think this idea of enoughness, we're told often we're not enough. Like, it's like you're not enough if you don't present in X way in this environment. And so the example I'll give with this one is I like to, lovingly call them my burns with my incarnation cross. But the last major change event that I had before this one was, or actually it was what started this one. It was realization that the brand I had built, Curly Executive, still came out of a reaction to having been in corporate and needing to have an identity, even in my entrepreneurial activity, that was okay and passable in case I would ever go back to corporate, and so I could manage it while I was in corporate. And so I was working so deeply on shadow work and this whole identity thing with my clients. And at some point in time, I realized that like, oh shit, I still have another mask on and I need to take that off. And so that piece, like this real thing, is like, there are places where you're not being real with yourself. And I can confidently say that because it's true for all of us. And so the more we uncover that, the easier it is to follow this authority. I think that it's so tricky with this one because we say it and it seems simple, but there's such a deeper level of conditioning. And then on top of it, we got the open centers in play. So it's like, there's like, to me, a bombardment of things to confuse you. So doing the work on digging into this is super important because then you're anchored. And that is your guidance. Like, so it's kind of like you're getting the guidance and you can receive it.
Because you know what to listen to. Like, I love that you mentioned that, like with the solar plexus open, the root, the spleen, the sacral, like you're feeling, remember, any open center you have, you're feeling your energy and someone else's energy. It's like a cacophony of energy slamming into each other. And it's hard in the moment to extract, are those my emotions or not? Is that my sense of nervousness or not? And it can derail us if we're not careful. And for anyone who's tuning in who has an open self, I know you won't have self-projected authority. We still need to do the identity work too. Like, because what we intend to do, because I've got the open self, is we put on the costume of who we think other people want us to be. And that can be just as damaging. It's not that we don't have an identity. It's just that it's constantly evolving. So this is still valuable. If you came to, like, for a friend to find out about their self-projected authority, you're like, oh, but mine's open. This doesn't apply to me. Yes, it does. Like, this is still work that we should be doing. We just engage with it differently because our sense of self is in this state of evolution.
Awesome sauce.
Yeah.
So we're going to give about a minute more for any questions. It's always fun to see just with the percentage of the different authority types. There authority, not type, but
kinds of authority.
Kinds. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward. Kinds of authority. How many people show up? Right? It makes sense. But if you didn't get to show up live and you do have questions, please reach out to us. We love nerding out about this. This is a fun space for both of us. I think Jaclyn is shadow work queen, me as a multi-passionate entrepreneur who's kind of and multi-passionate entrepreneur and sleeping phoenix who has been really living that in different ways.
Your birth and death cycles lately have been like ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom.
and also as just a Black woman in America, real talk. So feel free to reach out on us about this. We're both really passionate about this topic, and whether this is your authority or this is a center that you're working with in different ways. I think we love this stuff. I can say it for me. Do you love this stuff, Jack?
I do.
Okay. All right. So we're going to wrap this for today, but we are back tomorrow. And,
sacral authority and sounding board and lunar authority. So we paired the reflectors and the mental projectors together intentionally because a lot of what both of y'all have to kind of work through is not letting, just like we talked about, all those open centers hijack the conversation and like knowing what to really tune into and trust. So we'll be talking about that tomorrow. So sacral authority first, and then sounding board / environmental, you may have heard it referenced as, and then lunar together.
I'm so excited for these. I know it's silly, but like, well, sacral, obviously, we're sacral, so there's that. And then there's like sounding board because of my little unconscious setup and my 43 to 23 and all sorts of fun things. We won't talk about
lunar, my conscious setup. So
like, and then lunar because I'm obsessed with the moon and my whole like moon cycle thing now of like waiting. It's gonna be amazing.
It's powerful.
And we love y'all. And I know some people are being shy, but we love you too.
We love you.
If you get a question later and you'd like to DM us, we are both people who actually answer our DMs.
Yeah, now that I figured out how, this is why I always joke. I had a geriatric moment earlier this year where I was like, I couldn't figure out how to access some of my inbox. So I figured it out now. So if you ever DM'd me and you're like, she just never replied, I'm getting there. I'm going back through the.
If you don't reply, tag us on a comment because it means we don't see it in requests. But other than that, we'll reply. All right. Goodbye.